When I do a PowerPoint, I want to give you your money's worth. I've only got 95 slides on here, so it may take a while to get through it. But I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I was afraid we might be getting some snow earlier when they were doing all the forecasting, but the cold weather doesn't stop us to get out and do this over Summertown. First off, how many former students do I have here tonight? Raise your hand. One or two. You were my student. I started figuring up that day. I got some students that are 65 and 66 years old. And the last year I taught, I had a girl in class. I taught her grandmother. So, But I've done this. I've done Summertown a time or two. I did it in the museum down at the old jail. The last time I did it, it's been quite a while. And I did it up at Summertown for the alumni one year, and I always add stuff to it. And I hope I can add some things for the Summertown people that they hadn't seen. I know a lot of them have seen most of these pictures and things that I have on here. But a link to our past, Summertown and Crestview. And my connection to Summertown, I was born and raised in Loretta. But when I got out of college, I got hired. When I went to see Mr. Plaskett, he said, you can teach 2nd grade at St. Joe or 8th grade at Summertown. That was a hard decision for me. And so I said, well, I'm going to go to Summertown, and I'll teach up there a year or two, and then I'm going to get a job down at Loretta High School teaching history when Mr. Russ retires. Well, I got to Summertown. I guess I liked it pretty good because I stayed 40 years. And so I was there quite a while, so I got into the history of Summertown along with some of the people there. But if you notice, I've got Summertown and Crestview because it ended up being two communities for quite a while up there, and you're going to see the difference in the two of them there. A lot of this information that I'm going to give you, it's rehashed information from lots of different sources. I've got lots of them listed on here. Of course, Sandy Curtis is my go-to person. Miss Sandy died this last year, and Jackie called me up and she said, Mom said if anything ever happened to you, call you up and cut her and call you up and get you to come up. And so we got a lot of history stuff that she had stored there in the library. But in 1976, she did a book, a look at the past, working towards the bicentennial, and a lot of the Summertown history has been saved in that book. Andy Prosser, he was a 12-year-old boy when he did a project in the Boy Scouts for the history of Summertown. Sandy got a lot of her information from his project that he did. Christine Martin, Miss Martin was secretary at the school when I started teaching there. She was on the bicentennial committee. I don't know the Mary Maud Carter, but said she was an authority that she got information from. Maggie Bogus had a lot of these local pictures you're going to see. Jill Garrett was the historian for Murray County, and she had done several stories on Summertown and done some books that had some information in it. Will Black. We actually have an audio of Will Black being interviewed in the 1970s. Scotty and I have it. I don't know where it is, but I got it somewhere. And you'll see his picture on the program here. Dina James is Mr. James, who was the English teacher at Summertown for many years. That was his daughter. And I imagine she did a project when she was a senior in high school. I've got several of her pictures on here. Then I get down to Diane Webb. Now, Diane did it with me last time I did it. Diane was a librarian at Summertown, and we did lots of projects together. And Diane and I loved to do the history of Summertown. And Diane retired, and she passed away within a year after she retired. But I got a lot of information from Diane, and Diane and I found a lot of information together. So I just want to give credit to all those people that I know were involved. I also have Scotty Franks here, who's doing the videoing tonight. And Scotty got into it with us, and he knows just about all this history too. I guess I'm turning it all over to him now. He's the authority in Summertown. Summertown is located on the Highland Rim. We know the Highland Rim goes around the Central Basin in Tennessee. That area was known as the Barrens. Why the Barrens? Because of Murray County. The people in Murray County, the people on the bottom looked down on the people on top. They didn't think much of the people in Summertown area. That was the Barrens. That was the wilderness, so that's how it got the nickname the Barrens. In 1815, a wagon train led by Jacob Pennington came through the area. They ended up settling in Hennerville, and you see all of his sons there. And so they're going to settle Hennerville. The interesting thing, in 1815, they weren't supposed to be there. It was still Indian territory. But they were the first ones in that area in Hennerville, and they'll start a distillery in Hennerville, and we have one there now. So they settled that area. So I guess they kind of pioneered the road coming through that area. Kind of what I'm getting to there. And in 1816, we have the Chickasaw claim and gave full access for the white man to start moving into Indian Territory. And so lots of people started moving into Lawrence County then. Of course, Lawrenceburg is going to be settled starting in 1817 to 1819. A lot of people start moving into the Summertown area. 1816 to 1820, they start building Jackson's Military Road. He wanted a quicker way to get to New Orleans if needed. The last time when he had to go down in for the War of 1812, when he had to go to New Orleans in 1814, he said there's got to be a better route. So he built a military highway which comes through to the east of Summertown. And then for some way or other, the road ended up coming from Columbia down through Summertown, down through Hennerville to the road that would go over to Waynesboro. That became the route over to the Tennessee River. So that came through the Summertown area. So that is the road system that got people in there. And you see this little postmark down here bottom, Hennerville, 1860, post office. The Civil War, just a few things over the Civil War. Summertown there was lots of going on with troops moving in and out of Summertown. They probably went through there going to Shiloh, coming back from Shiloh. Also, we had Lawrenceburg attacked in 1863, and when they got run out of Lawrenceburg, the northern troops headed north, and they were involved in 3 skirmishes headed north. One of those skirmishes was close to the Summertown area. And then, of course, November the 23rd, 1864, we had the battle at Foul Springs, which is about a mile west of where Summertown is. And so there's a marker up there for that. So that was a pretty good size Civil War engagement that involved Nathan Bedford Forrest. And the thing I want to mention there is these soldiers, of course, that's not a picture from there, it's just a picture. But a lot of these soldiers, that's Foul Springs, the marker. There are several of them buried at the Summertown Cemetery, several Union soldiers. I've got 13 names there. I don't know how many of them were actually involved in engagements there or might have got killed, shot at Shiloh and died on the way back and buried there. The ones, you see some dates up there, that shows when they were in the military. So they probably came through the area, and then after the war, they decided, hey, that's a pretty good place. I'm going to move back there. And so somebody, I haven't done it, but somebody could go research these people and find out why did they end up back in Summertown buried. That's the most we have at one spot in the county that I know of that are buried at the Summertown Cemetery up there. And those are all northern troops that probably came through that area. An early story, we had a man by the name of John Bricknell. He had been in the Civil War, and after the war, he's living in Mount Pleasant, and he's selling books. I don't know what kind of books he's selling, if he's selling Bibles or something else, but he came through the Summertown area, headed down to Lawrenceburg, and he talked to a guy, his last name was White. He said, I'm going down here and selling some books, and I'll be coming back through, headed back to Mount Pleasant later on. Well, when he came back through the area up the turnpike, the White stopped him and killed him and got his money and headed back up to Mount Pleasant. He ended up getting arrested. He got locked up in the jail. You see a couple newspaper clippings right here. They're kind of out of order, but that's where you can kind of get the story. Oops, we'll do that. Where did that come from? That's not supposed to be on there. The Columbia Herald said about a half a mile beyond Summertown in the county of Lawrence, there are 5 trees on the roadside with crosses made of oak laths nailed on them, making a circle in which the noble John Bricknell was murdered, February 1868. He was a member of the Palefaces, which was a Ku Klux Klan organization around Mount Pleasant. And then the other one down here is actually out of the Pulaski Citizen, dated 1868, said 20 KKK night riders went to Columbia and demanded that they let White out of jail. And they ended up getting White from jail. They carried him back out on the turnpike where Bricknell had been buried, and they hung White there right over Bricknell's grave outside of Summertown. Kind of an interesting story. In 1882, we had a man move into the Summertown area from Indiana. His name was Joseph Crane. We just refer to him as J.J. Crane. We had a program done over him several years ago, but he came down to Summertown. He had visited it. He liked it. He came down. He decided to move there. He's going to come down. He's going to actually buy the Summit Hotel, which is in the area, and he is going to become a real estate man. And he is going to try to recruit people to come down and buy land in the Summertown area. And he becomes very popular doing this, and he is going to be one of the primary people, I think, responsible for turning Summertown into the Summertown Resort we're going to talk about. The picture on the right is a group of men, I guess businessmen, and that picture is made at Lookout Mountain, if you can look off in the distance there. And he is in that picture. I think that's him on the top right there. And this is made at Lookout Mountain. What he was doing over there, I don't know. But there's an interesting follow-up to that. At Lookout Mountain, there is a very famous hotel. You know the name of the hotel? It's the Summertown Hotel at Lookout Mountain. And that's what was there. And you pull Summertown up on Google, and you'll find the Summertown Hotel in Chattanooga or Lookout Mountain, which I think is very interesting. And so he's a big-time businessman in Summertown. I started teaching at Summertown in '73. This newspaper article came out May the 30th of '73, right before I started teaching there. And this was done by Cherry Shelton, who had just graduated, I think, from Summertown. I don't know if she did this for a senior project at Summertown or whatever, but that was in the Tennessean, talking about the Summertowners remembering the grand old days. And they're talking about Summertown as a resort. And what made Summertown a resort? Crane recruiting people there. And we had a spring, a magical spring. It had medical, help people with medical problems to come drink out of the Summertown water. Done good for me. But that is the Summertown spring. I don't know what year that picture is made, but it's somewhere around the turn of the century, late 1890s, early 1900s, something like that. Octavia Crane and Bess McDaniels. It's in Summertown, Tennessee. And on the left right here, this is the Summertown Resort. And that's the plot. This is an 1898 map plot of the lots that they were selling right there. I don't know. Scotty, can you help me on exactly where that is? I always thought it was right there where the road split. That's what I thought. But if you look at this map, it messes me up because it says this is the road to Clifton and this is the road to Hohenwald. And so that puts it on the wrong side. I think they have, but anyhow, these are the lots that some of them are vacant and some of them have sold. But these are lots around, and it says Park Place. I thought that was Monopoly, but we got Park Place in Summertown, and that's the 1898 map of the Summertown resort area. And this is Dina James Trimble now, and this is her at the spring, right there. And that picture was made in the early '70s. This is a picture of the spring. And look how all these girls are dressed with their hats and the parasols and stuff. And I don't know what year this was, but always check out what this guy over here behind the tree. Yeah. And this is a picture of the resort. I can't make out where any of the buildings were, but that is a picture of the resort area. And you see lots of buildings there, back over here. What time of year is that? Winter. You see ice frozen on this. So we had cold weather back then too. Look at the ice on the lines and stuff up there. Now they've got power. They've got lines here. That's not probably power lines. That's what? Telephone lines. But that's what that is. That's an old picture. I wish it was in better shape, but Bobby always said a bad picture is better than no picture. And then I've got this. Now, I can't remember where I got this. This is the Tennessee Advocate, and it's for Summertown, Lawrence County, Tennessee, August of 1883. And it's volume 1, number 1. I'm assuming that may be the only one. But it's got to be done by J.J. Crane. Everything on here is advertising about how great the area is. And it's, you got all timber, grain, fruits and grapes, vegetables, manufacturing. The county has, it talks about the finest water and all that stuff and all the wood that's here and how many factories we have. Bees, great place to raise bees, Brock, right there, talking about the bees. Henrys, you can raise chickens, raise eggs. We're having to pay too much to get them from other places. So basically, he's advertising to bring people in and start a business in Summertown. The Summertown Press. This is a copy of it. It was originally named the New South. Then they changed the name to the Busy South. And in 1891, it became, in 1900, it became the Summertown Press. Okay? There are several copies of the Summertown Press on microfilm, I think, at the archives. And the editor in 1900 is going to be John Bond. And in 1906, it became the Summertown Gazette until 1910. And so if you go back to these old papers, you'll find lots of information about Summertown in them. I love looking at the ads, that are on the sides over here. This one right here, she's located in the post office at Crestview, and she's selling wallpaper. I think that's kind of odd, and then you have like Farmers and Merchants. That's out of Mount Pleasant, advertising in the Summertown Press. So you need to look at all these articles and stuff that they have there. And then this is the Summertown Gazette. Diane got this from Fred Holloway, I think, back in the day. It's reversed, and I don't know how they did that or why it's reversed. So you can't see it. It shows up pretty good for the text, but the pictures don't show up real good. But you see up here at the top, you see Elo Crane. That's J.J. Crane's son right there. He's going to be very important. This is dated September 28, 1906. And Edith Johnson and Helen Christian are operating the Summertown Gazette at that time. It's a negative or something off of that, yeah. It's a reverse or a negative or whatever. But you can read, you can read those. There's the Summertown Drug Company right over here. The Central Hotel. There's your Central Hotel advertised. J.J. Crane, proprietor. But it's just neat to look at them. Summertown Banking Company. And this over here is J.J. Crane's picture. Doesn't show up real good. Then I want to mention this lady. This lady's name is Octavia Zollicoffer Bond. Octavia Bond is going to be an American writer, gifted author, lecturer, a Tennessee folklorist, and a genealogist. And she had a beautiful house somewhere close to Rockdale Hill. And she is going to write articles and stuff in the Summertown Press. And here's John Bond is her husband. And we talked about John Bond. You see his middle name? John Bryan Bond. You ever heard of William Jennings Bryan? He ran for president 5 times. Never won. That's his nephew. That's his nephew. And that was Olivia Zollicoffer's Bond's husband. Her daddy is Brigadier General Felix Zollicoffer. He was possibly the very first Confederate general killed in the Civil War. And her mama down here was Louisa Pocahontas Gordon Zollicoffer. A lot of Gordons from Murray County. She was a direct descendant from Pocahontas. And Olivia Zollicoffer Bond, her house was so beautiful, it was pictured in one of the ladies' magazines of the time. I've tried to find a copy of it. I don't know exactly which one it was, but I haven't found it yet. Her and John right there, and there's her tombstone. This is a book she wrote, Old Tales Retold. And she served as editor for the Southern Women's Magazine from 1913 to 1916. Her short stories included, now listen to this one, The Rule That Worked Both Ways, published in December 1904, issued of the Black Cat, featuring a scientist who invents a ray that makes ghosts visible and turns people into helium. Okay. Huh? I don't know. I just found the tombstone. John Bond, last thing on John Bond, Summertown Banking Company right here, 1912. So they're still in Summertown in 1912. And this is John Bond, signed by A.H. Kidd. I wonder how he's related to Tony. But John Bond was a legal counsel for the Citizens Telephone and Construction Company. Strange name. It was organized about 1900. All stockholders in Summertown got free telephone service. And so every business in Summertown, just about it, was a stockholder. Their main office was in Lawrenceburg, but they had an office in Summertown. The J.J. Crane home, he built his home in Summertown. J.J. Crane's was owned by Keith Curtis now. Have y'all been in that house? It is really neat, isn't it? Keith he's an artist, and he carves stuff, and he's got his kitchen cabinets have got dog carved going up after I got to quit doing that. Going up after a dog, going up after a squirrel or something. I forget what it was. But he has a beautiful house. Now I want you to notice one thing about that house. You have a door, an upstairs porch right here. Okay? in the Summertown, at all the hotels in Summertown, and sometimes all the hotels there, at night it would be so hot they'd sit outside till it cooled off. And so all these houses in Summertown that were hotels would have these upstairs doors on them where would come out to an upstairs patio or porch that they would sit on. And there, I guess that one's still there. I haven't been by to see, but I think that one is still there. Beautiful house though. J.J. Crane Central Hotel, built about 1883, torn down in 1960. Rooms were $1.50 per night, $5 a week. Y'all rent rooms out? For a little more than that. They live in the house that was built where that hotel is at. E.B. Washburn operated it in 1900. And this is off the stationery you'll see over there. But look at that. When I say hotels, you got to keep in mind, these are hotels from the late 1800s where they may not have but 5 or 6 rooms, that people are renting. And this is, huh? Right past it. You turn where it splits, right on the left, right up past it on the left, is where it was. Well, look here. This is where it was. That's a stationary summer and winter resort. So we're having people there all the time. That's it now, correct? That picture was made by Dina James in 1972 or 73, somewhere in there. It was built in 71. And that's where the hotel was. Another advertisement for the Central Hotel. Most of these hotels operated a hack line. You know what that is? Horse and buggy, where you could go out and see the countryside. They would go down and pick you up at the depot when you get off the train. People would take the train from Nashville, get off in Summertown. You go down, pick them up, take them to the hotel. And then they could go around Summertown. They could rent a horse, rent a buggy, go out on the countryside to see it. And lots of people in Summertown rented all of these. They may go all the way over to Napier. That'd be a day trip back then in a horse and buggy. And right across the road from the Central Hotel was the parish livery stable. And that's the livery stable there. And a very famous person in Summertown, Mr. Will Black, I told you about, that's him standing right there. He was part owner in this, and he's holding that horse and buggy right there. I think there's 13 people in that picture, a couple of them up in the loft there. Nothing, that's gone, it's not there anymore. And that's what they would be renting. Kitty Bloom Dunn and Ed Stockard in Summertown. That's an actual picture from Summertown. I wish we were back in those days, don't y'all? Summertown also had lots of resort cabins. The resort cabins would be like these up here. They'd be on the hillside there. Miller Dunn home. And some of them were used for dance halls and stuff like that. They would have brass bands, string bands. Dances were frequently held on Fridays and Saturday nights. They had a 10-piece band from Columbia every now and then that would come down and play. They were booming. That's a resort cabin. It's still there, I think, over behind where Dunn's store was, up in that area. They were all over the hillsides, sort of like Gatlinburg. Miss Maggie Bogus. The wealthy families in Nashville would come down and stay a week, stay 2 weeks there. This is Carl Bucket Holloway's house. Where his house was the Rennick Hotel. They tore that hotel down in 1960 and built that house, and they used the lumber from the hotel for a lot of the subfloor and stuff in the house. And the house is still there. If you head towards Hornwall, it's right there on the right. Kind of, yeah, right after the split. Yeah. And the Phelan right there also sold musical instruments, and I got some sheet music down at the museum that he sold. And it actually came out of the piano bench in the hotel there. This is the J.E. Usher Hotel. This is a picture made by Dina James in the early 1970s there. Pretty house then. J.E. Usher, we'll talk more about him. He came to Summertown, and he was head of the staff of doctors at the sanitarium. He operated the Crestview Hotel and a livery barn. I don't know where the Crestview Hotel was, which may have been the Usher Hotel. I don't know. He had stock and poultry barn in Summertown known as Oak Lawn Stock and Breeding Farm. This picture was made in 2012. Doyce and I went up there and did that. I think Doyce took that picture, and we walked around in it. It was about dilapidated at that time, but we could go up and go through some of the rooms and stuff. I know in the later part of the history, the railroad company rented rooms out for railroad employees when work gangs and stuff would come through Summertown. They would stay there because right across on the other side of the railroad tracks is where the depot was. And so the railroad people would stay in that house. The Bellevue Hotel, I think this is it from the description of where it was located. That was the Bailey's house. And why do I think that was hotel? That's about the location. It was 1 block south of the turnpike, right there to the east side of the railroad tracks. So that's where that is. And what do you notice about that house? Got an upstairs door coming out onto what probably was an upstairs porch too, right? So that was probably it. These are a couple more houses there. This was Bessie McDaniel Hazelwood's house right there. And you got the door upstairs on it right there. And this is Will Black's house right here. So this is the early picture of it. And there's the upstairs door. In this one, they've taken the door out on that one. And then there's Will Black sitting on his front porch right there. What's on this picture up there. And those are right on the south side of the turnpike right there in the middle of Summertown. This is a neat one. This is L.O. Crane's General Store before 1900 or around 1900. That's not a very good picture. But somebody got that to Kathy Nikas down at the archives, and she's trying to figure out where it was. I said, I know where it is. That's L.O. Crane. She said, how do you know? I said, well, look at this picture right there. We know that's L.O. Crane's. That was on a postcard they did, L.O. Crane's General Store. And look at them. This one does not have the front porch and stuff on it, but look at the tree.
I think that's an early picture.
Yeah. That's it right there. L.O. Crane, that's it right there. L.O. Crane's General Store, it was upstairs was a Masonic hall. On the second floor, they had a meeting place, community organization, a dance hall. They had dances on Saturday nights. They had church on Sunday morning. It's where the IOOF Lodge met. You know what that was? I'm going to quit touching buttons on here. What is that? International Order of Oddfellows. And then this is the Order of Rebekahs. And the Order of Rebekahs was connected to the Oddfellows, but that would be the ladies. And they would have different levels that were based upon the females of the Bible. And they would deliver on Wednesdays and Fridays if you live within 1 mile. Advertisement for the store. Crane Brothers, General Merchandise. Boots, shoes, notions. You know what notions are, right? Thread. Spools of thread, needles, stuff like that. You see that? That's it. It was made into a house. It's A.D. Prosser's house, the one I was talking to you about a while ago. The second floor was the lodge and everything. It was converted into a house in 1940. It still had I know at one time they still had the door upstairs that was a Masonic door that went into their special room. I don't know if it's still in there. And Doyce's cousin lived there. Every time we go up there, Doyce said, my cousin lived there. This is my favorite picture. This picture came from the Louisville and Nashville archives in Louisville, Kentucky. It is a train with 9 passenger cars on it stopping in Summertown. Guess who this guy in the white coat is? That's J.J. Crane going down to pick up the people and take them to the hotels. And they're all over. They're up here on top of the train and everything. And I got a Louisville-Nashville history book of the Louisville-Nashville passenger service. Pretty good thick book. And I just got it last week. I start looking through it. Guess what picture I find in that book? That one right there, talking about it. And it was made in 1897. There are a lot of people on that train. Summertown Crestview Depot. You notice how I said that? Telegraph service was available in August of 1883. The railroad got there in 1883. The depot is going to burn down in 1829. And it's going to be replaced by a boxcar. That train would stop there at that depot. And the boxcar that they put in place of the depot, later on they're going to move it. It's going to become a house for A.H. Hoffman in Summertown. But this is the article about the fire there. Somebody tried to rob it at nighttime and burnt the station down. And that's a picture of the station. Now, I said Summertown, Crestview. When the railroad started coming in, all the people in Summertown were worried to death. The railroad's going to mess up our groundwater. The railroad's going to bring a lot of people into town we don't want. It's going to mess up our nice, peaceful resort. But the railroad came anyhow. But right about the time the railroad got there, a group of people got together and they formed a separate community up around where the railroad was. and they named that community Crestview. The people in Summertown got mad. So you had Summertown and Crestview side by side, but Crestview is going to capitalize because that's where the railroad's coming through. And so it is the Crestview Depot. No, it's the Summertown Depot. If you look at all of the tickets and stuff, it's Summertown, Tennessee to Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. L&N Railroad, Summertown, Tennessee, dated 1819. But the postcard right here, what's it say? It's in Crestview. So a lot of conflicts about that. And so that's kind of an interesting story. It's going to burn in 1929. And these are some more tickets, claim tickets on it. This is 1909 over here, Summertown, Tennessee. Another baggage claim. That's where they're shipping something from Mount Pleasant to Summertown. Shipping document 1907. And then this is the railroad track. It's kind of opposite what you would think. This is north, that's south. This is running west towards Napier. That became a big part of Summertown. That was the why. Burleson's garage would be right over, it'd be right here. Burleson's garage would be right in here. And so the Y is back behind it on this side, and that's heading over towards Napier. And all the trains and stuff. Napier was a big mining industry over there, and so a lot of people would be going to work at Napier. They'd catch a train and ride over there to work. A lot of shipping came through Summertown. This blueprint was made in 1917. This is a 1904 map. Here comes a railroad going from Mount Pleasant down to Lawrenceburg. There's the Y and the road going over. And this Y comes over to here, and it becomes the railroad bed right there now. The railroad bed is where the railroad was. And Summertown is actually over in this area here. They got the name down there, but it's actually right in there. Napier, I showing you some stuff on the way to Napier. We've talked about that before. This is a store in Summertown. Mr. A.B. Alford stands on the porch of the first Summertown Bank where he served as teller. Martha, y'all related to... Yeah, there's got to be some of Bobby's relatives there. And that bank only lasted a year. It burnt down. It's not good for a bank. Then this one's going to be built back. Guess what they built it out of? Yeah. And so it's going to be built back. The original was built actually in 1904, and they tore it. It burnt. A.J. Gould is the president. It's going to be rebuilt with concrete block. It's going to stay until 1933. The Depression hits. Franklin Roosevelt declares a bank holiday. It never opened back up. This was also used as a post office. Later on, it was an apartment. I know, Scotty?
My mom made the original
From that bank. I saw that. And yeah, and so it was used as an apartment. I forget who told me their parents actually lived in that apartment at one time. And then Keith Curtis got a hold of it and refurbished it, put a new roof on it, and turned it into its little wood shop. And because he lives right there close to it. So it's in pretty good shape now. Probably one of the better buildings in Summertown. Summertown Banking Company, these are some of the canceled checks from the Summertown Banking Company. This one, Summertown Banking Company. What I liked about this one, sounds like a law firm. Howard, Springer, and Howard. I don't know who that was to have four of them sign it over here. Summertown Post Office is going to be built originally in 1877. Regular deliveries are made on horseback. Mr. Staggs is going to walk. Now, this got me. He walked from Laurel Hill to Center to Summertown and back every day to deliver mail. That's a long ways. That's a long ways to drive, much less walk. But every day. And the citizens of Crestview didn't like Summertown, so they tried to blow up the post office on 4 different occasions with dynamite. And Summertown had so much mail going through it because it went out to Napier and Laurel Hill and Center, Interval, that it became a star route for the post office, postal service. And so you had Summertown there. Down here you have a Summertown cancel. This is 1912 cancel stamp. And over here is the seal that Scotty's mother. Where did she get that? That needs to be in the Summertown Museum or the Lawrenceburg Museum. But it's pretty good mark there. Crestview Post Office is going to be established in 1891. This is a 1930 picture, 1940 picture, 1970 building. Now, the Crestview is going to last from, I think they really officially get started around when the railroad got there. But in 1951, the Postmaster General says, we don't need two post offices side by side. Y'all can decide whether you want Summertown or Crestview. So they decided in 1951 to keep the Summertown because it was the older name, and they put it in the Crestview post office building because it was a newer building. And so Summertown and Crestview became Summertown in 1951. Summertown Crestview businesses. I'm not going over all of them. I'll just kind of look at them and see how many different. This is Summertown. These are businesses in Summertown Crestview. Look at all those. Lots of duplicates of things there. And we got more. A lot of livery stables, paint, general merchandise, a lot of general merchandise, hardware, woven fence wire, feed stores, fancy grocery store, I don't know. And then down here you got a drummer wagon. Somebody going around town selling stuff out of the wagon. This is one of them. Jensen J. Jensen and Company, hardwood lumber. And then we get to the sanitarium. I love this. Luckily, we have a picture of it. It's actually Medical and Surgical Science College and Sanitarium, if you want to get technical. In the 1880s, had 81 rooms. They had to be small rooms, but it had 81 rooms in it. And it was funded by public subscription. Had 14 doctors on staff. 14 doctors, and it was a school too. They taught medical stuff there. This is their 1899-1900 brochure they're sending out to people, and you see it's the Medical and Surgical Science College and Sanitarium, Summertown, co-educational. Co-educational. This is a list of the doctors. I want to look at this for just a second. This first guy up here is from Melbourne, Australia. And then you got your faculty down here. You look at what they do, all the stuff that they are specialized in. Botany, pharmacy, medical Latin, therapeutics, electrotherapeutics. They're shocking people in 1900, you know. Professor of chemistry. Just think about that. And they got all those people at this medical school in Summertown. Do you know where that was? As best I can determine, you know where the storage facilities are on the cutoff by the monument? I think they were right in that area, right in there somewhere. It was in the Crestview area, and I believe that's where it was. And this right here is Dr. Usher, the guy we talked about earlier. He moved to Crestview in 1898. He's going to be over the medical stuff there. You know how we got this picture and that stuff right there? They had a lawsuit against him and the college. And Kathy found it at the archives on some of the old stuff and brochures back filed away and pulled that out and got it to me. I showed it to Scotty. Scotty got into some of their relatives, didn't you? They'd never seen a picture of him. And so Scotty sent the picture to them so the relatives could see the picture of their great-great-grandfather or whatever. This is also about the medical school. This guy was called the snake doctor. He experimented with medicines made from snake oil, snake venom, used it to treat patients with rheumatism. When a member of an impoverished family up there needed money, they could sell their body to the school. And whenever they died, the school got to take that body and use it to teach medical or do stuff with. And so they started getting a lot of bad stories about stuff that was going on over there. And it ended up getting a bad rep, and it eventually closed around 1908, 1909. And then it burnt down in 1914. A lot of buildings in Summertown burnt down in 1914. Find that suspicious. I wanted to go back right here. You see the quote down here in Latin? How many people read Latin? This is it right here. He who does not advance loses ground. That's what's on that first thing over there. Summertown Seminary. This is different now. This is another building. The bad thing about this, we don't have a picture of it. I would love to have a picture of this. It's supposed to have been a pretty good sized school. It was the first to offer college level classes in Lawrence County. They taught algebra, English, Latin, Greek, English literature, Shakespeare. modern and ancient history. It included a library with a beautiful staircase and offered co-ed education. They had between 50 and 90 students. They had 2 literary societies that met and debated on Friday nights. This is in Summertown. Cost you $1.25 a month to attend. And the professor was an M.R. Barnes. Another teacher was Rennick. The school closed in 1908. The equipment will be sold to Baxter, Tennessee Methodist Episcopal Church. The building burned it in 1914. That's not the real staircase, but it had a staircase something like that. I can imagine what kind they would have had back then with the way people built stuff. 2-story building, funded and built by the local citizens. Students were boarded in homes. They ran into financial difficulty. The 2-story building was turned over to the Methodist Conference, and like we said, everything went up to Baxter, Tennessee. Tennessee. That's the bell from Summertown right there. You know where that bell is now, don't you? Okay. That bell was hung in Baxter, Tennessee. The bell was on top of Ivy Hall. It was a mission school, and there was a guy driving through Baxter, Tennessee, heard that bell ring, and he recognized the sound of it because he had gone to the Summertown Seminary. So that's where they found out where the bell ended up. And then several years later, when I was teaching there and Miss Sandy was teaching at Summertown, she raised $500 and went up to Baxter and bought the bell and brought the bell back. We had it on a little cart on the floor with dollies with the casters on it, and it was always in the way. We had to roll it everywhere to get it out of the way. And finally, the students got together and ended up the students and faculty got together and built this bell tower out in our courtyard at Summertown and put the bell in that. So that's the bell from the seminary at Summertown. It's hanging in the courtyard at Summertown High School now. Pretty neat. And that wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for Sandy Curtis. The Ratchet Drugstore, owned by Fred R. Usher. That sign right there is advertising Black Draught laxative on the front of the building. They sold oil paint, cigars, tobacco, Edison phonographs, records. This is a picture of Crestview, Main Street in Crestview. I don't know what year. Huh? I don't know if it's past the railroad or you're standing on the railroad tracks looking west. Yeah. This is also Crestview 1940s. The post office is right here. Bishop's store is right there. Jimmy Henson's shop is right there. Bucket Holloway's store right here. And then that's the potato house right there. The potato house was still there when I started teaching. And I think they tore it down the next year or something. They tore it down like 74. Ada School was named for Ada Crane, and it was built for kids 1 through 8. They had a school there, a log school, and they needed something bigger. And so they, Ada School, the land is going to be donated by L.O. Crane. His wife, Ada Crane, had died, and so he wanted something in her memory. So he donated the land for Ada School. And L.S. Duke and Minnie Cooper, named a car after her, right, was appointed to teach in 1905. Got paid $31.15 per month. And Ada Crane had died in 1902 of typhoid. And so that is Ada School. I got several pictures of Ada School. You know, pretty white building there. Lots of kids going to Ada School.
Where was that at?
That's where Summertown High School is. Right there on that same area. I'm going to fix to get to that. I got an interesting thing about that. Let me see if I'm going to... Summertown High School, Ada School is going to be there, and they decide they need a high school. So they're going to build a high school. It's going to be built in the shape of an H. And half of the H, one side of the H is the elementary school. The other side of the H is a high school, and in between is kind of like a commons area with a meeting area for all of them. And so they build it next to Ada School. They go into Ada School, they have a room they teach chemistry in, a room for home ec, and then they tear a wall out between 2 rooms and turn that into their gym. So that becomes their first basketball gym in Summertown. Okay? This is going to happen in 1927. Okay? So, this is a picture of the first graduating class of Summertown. But it says 1930. What happened in 1927 when they started the high school? The first year, it's all freshmen. 1928, it's freshmen, sophomores. 1929, it's freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. 1930, they have the first graduating class. The picture is still up there. All the class pictures are up there. While I was at Summertown, I took down those class pictures down, and I hung them back up 3 different times. And there was 80-something of them. That was a pain. But that one is still there. But they did not get to have graduation. You know why? They had a smallpox breakout. So that group of kids, the first class, did not get to graduate. So 1927 was the first year. So 2027 will be the 100th year of Summertown High School. This is Summertown High School in 1935. It's going to be a different building. This one's going to be built in, let's see, the other one burnt down in 40, one of them burnt down in 45, and it's going to be rebuilt. The one I was in, that I started teaching in, the part where my room was the one that was built in 45. This is a 1952 picture taken of the block. Now, this area right here is Summertown High School's area. Over here, kind of probably where Ada School was. That's the H-shaped building right there. This is the 1936 gym that will be built. I've got a whole story about that in a minute. But I want to talk about this property right here. L.O. Crane donated property to build Ada School. 1904. Okay, got that? When I'm looking at Property Viewer, I click on that. I'm going around clicking on things, seeing where property was in Summertown. I clicked on that, and it comes up, and it always has the owner. It clicked up, and its owner, Summertown High School. I said, uh-oh, something's different here. I click on every other school property in the county, and it says Lawrence County Board of Education. So I saw Miley down at the courthouse, and I asked him, he said, I saw that. I thought that was a misprint or something. What I think they did is that property probably not owned by the Lawrence County Board of Education. It's owned by Summertown because it was donated. The county school system never owned that. It was donated by the people, by L.O. Crane and the people of Summertown to build a school zone. Now, when you click on this over here where the tennis courts and the baseball field are, that's Lawrence County Board of Education. But that's Summertown High School. Just something neat. This part right here is going to be the library and all right in here. This is the oldest part of the school now. This is the 1936 gym. It was built during the Depression. It was designed, the plans were drawn up by somebody from Summertown. It was actually built by people from Summertown under the direction of the WPA. And in that building, they had a brass plaque on the end wall that said WPA on it. Okay, Works Progress Administration. So when the elementary school was built, we thought they were going to tear it down. So me and a couple boys went in there and we took the plaque off the wall. We carried it over to the elementary school, put it in our trophy case because it'd been the elementary school. It's disappeared. Somebody's got it. Because Ricky Mabry called me up. He says, where is it? I said, well, last time I saw it is at the elementary school. So it's disappeared. But the WPA built that. And they tore it down last year. But neat thing, I crawled around underneath the floor of that thing back when I hunted beer cans, and I found a cone top champagne velvet, and I found a 1937 Schlitz beer can underneath that floor. They didn't start making beer cans till 35, so it's about as early as you're going to find one around here. But that was a neat old building right there. And then that was the old ag building in Summertown. And then here you still see they have the outhouses out here in 1952. 48 in this one right here. All the bleachers were on one end. Did they have a wood stove in there then? They had two wood stoves, I think, and they actually set out on part of the floor. That's how they heated the gym. And there wasn't much room between the floor and the walls. And there's the elementary school. That's the last elementary school before they moved over to the new one they got now, and the 36 gym back there. This is a Red Cross quilt that was made, and I know exactly when this was made. It's 1919. You know how I know? If you zoom in on these little crosses, it's got to be a Red Cross quilt. When you zoom in on it, it's got 1919 sewed on them, and it also has lots of names on there. These names you can read on there. Ethel Usher Crane. These are the names that are sold in those places, and that's some of the ladies back there. And I imagine, I'm going to bet that's Ada School back there behind them, if I were guessing. There they are again. Churches in Summertown. This is First Methodist Church, built on the corner of Church Street and Highland Avenue. This church was built and held together mostly by pegs, destroyed by fire in 1942. These two churches, you had the Baptist church on the left, 1900 to 1940s. It had stained glass windows in it. And the Christian church was completed in 1910. It's where the Church of Christ is now. Crestview baseball team. Only thing down here, it says CNS ball team. CNS, Crestview in Summertown. But over here it says, Crestview, Tennessee. So I don't know. I know one of the guys, a Washington boy, one of the boys got hit by a baseball in the head and killed him. One of these boys in this picture. But that's an old picture. I don't know. She is she's an Alford. Her name, she's an Alford, I think. Oh, maybe not. I think she's one of these are. This is a softball team. Softball goes way back. Look at that. Lena Alford. There we go. Mildred Crane, Anna Green, Maggie Alford. Other sports they liked to do at Summertown were sportsman hunting, horse racing, and cockfighting back in the day. Holloway Grocery Store. This is Bucket's store. This is a picture made in 1951. And this is made in 1947. That's the potato house right over there beside it. And you got the old globes on top of the gas pumps and stuff there. A.J. Gould's house. This house is still there. That's where the first mayor of Summertown lived. Summertown was actually incorporated in 1907 and unincorporated in 1911. It only lasted like 4 years. They had a couple of mayors, though, I think. But A.J. Gould gave the land right across from him to the children of Summertown. The youngest child in Summertown are the children of Summertown, and that's where the Sandcastle Library was put, and it's still. What are they using that for now? You know, Scotty? Library's still there, still doing it, but that's where it's at, and that is the actual copy of the deed right there to the children of Summertown. So they own that property, and children of Summertown own it. So it'll always be the children of Summertown. So I don't know how you deal with that, but district attorney, okay, it's there. It's
put anything there, you have to have the approval.
yeah. L.O. Crane, we've talked about, had the store. L.O. Crane was 40-something years old when World War I broke out, and he was the guy recruiting people from Lawrence County, mainly from Summertown, to go to war. He felt guilty because he was sending all these young men to fight, so he joined and went. So he goes to France, and right toward the end of the war, on July, it ended in November, July the 19th, he gets killed. And he's buried in France. This is a picture of his tombstone in France. Leoline O. Crane. And the story I have about that is his name was Leo Line Crane. He didn't have a middle name. And when he had to fill out his registration form, it had a place for a middle name, so he put 0. So he became L.O. Crane. And then this monument you see right here, this is the World War I monument in Lawrence County. It's also the monument to him. The reason it's in Summertown is because of him. Okay? Lots of people looked up to him around Summertown and Lawrence County. And so they built the Legion Hall in Lawrenceburg, and they had a contest between several people, famous military people in World War I, and the one that won was L.O. Crane. And so this was the L.O. Crane post. Of course, that name and all is gone from there now, but that was a postcard, and that building is where? Right across from E.O. Kaufman, and that's it right there. This is a picture of him talking about Lieutenant L.O. Crane, killed in action, prominent Lawrence County businessman. That's as good a picture as we have of that. You know what that is, right? That is the farm. And the farm got into Summertown in 1971. Dot saw him coming in, right? How many buses did they have? Don't worry. Yeah, you see a lot of the buses out there. Of course, I taught a lot of kids at school. They got there in 71, and they would take spells. They would come to school at Summertown for 4 or 5 years. Then they'd start their own high school. Then 3 or 4 years later, they'd come back to Summertown. I taught a lot of farm kids at Summertown. Stephen Gaskin. This is Stephen Gaskin. He was ex-Marine, and he was a professor, college professor in San Francisco. And he's going to lead this group from San Francisco to the hills of Tennessee. and become their leader. He is in the Psychedelic Hall of Fame, and his wife is in the Midwife Hall of Fame. But anyhow, I taught his son in school, Ben Gaskin, and he played basketball at Summertown High School, and I taught lots of them. Lots of them. They've gone on to do great things, and see them on the internet every now and then. But that's a picture of them coming into Lawrence County. Summertown High School Veterans Memorial. We did this in 2012. Scotty and Diane Webb and I. This is about my last year up there, and so on the way out, and we got this together. I don't know how we came up with the idea to do that. Do you remember, Scotty? But the three of us got to going on it, and we did the research, and we found what this was for all of the boys who had graduated from Summertown High School and gotten killed in service. We did a monument for them out here in the Commons area, and so we got this stone done. We raised the money. I forget how much it cost, but it was with several dollars. We raised the money to put that stone out there. I've got all the names over here with me that are on it, but that was for World War I, World War II, and Korea. And Butch Mara's dad he's one of the ones in Korea that's on there. And we got all the family members to come up there. Had a big deal that day, and it was really neat. And one of the things I'm most proud of being at Summertown. Lots of the old family names from Summertown. Pennington, Staggs. You see a lot of those. Washburn. This is a map I did a long time ago, and Diane and I were going to paint it on one of the walls there in the hallway of the school, and we never did get around to doing it, showing where things were probably located. And of course, you don't know exactly where the line was between Crestview and Summertown, but to the best of my ability, I think it was right about here. The Baptist church is right in here, and the Methodist church is. I think the Baptist church and the Methodist church postcard says Summertown, the Baptist church postcard says Crestview. So somewhere between those two is where it's located. Know where the jail was. The jail's right over here, close to where the old post office used to be, right in there. And of course, we said we had the Bellevue Hotel right there. Now we'll get back over here where you got the seminary. No, not the cemetery. The sanitarium was back over here. This is where the Baileys lived. Is where the Summertown Seminary was, in that area right there. But that's a map of where the things were located that we know of. I put this on there just to sort of show you inside the old gym. This is the old 1936 gym. This team right here won the district tournament, 1950 district tournament. Satin uniforms. They were uptown. This is a 1934 boys basketball uniform team right there. 1942 baseball team. So we had this right here shows the 21st district basketball, and Summertown was pretty prominent in basketball, girls and boys, in all those years. That's why I put that up there. And the 21st district was really good. And the gym. Do we know the exact date? I see 2 or 3 different things on it. I'm going to say it started in 53 and was completed in 54, something like that. 54. These beams right here are redwood. These beams were hauled to Summertown on railroad cars. How they got them from the railroad tracks down to the gym, I don't know. Wouldn't it be nice to have pictures of that? But there are none. And wouldn't it be nice to see how they put those things up in 1954? But that gym, and I told some of the other ones here, I started teaching at Summertown in 1973. And everybody talking about this massive, great gym. They were proud of the gym. And now we call it the old gym. It was only 19 years old when I started teaching there. And now it's 70-something years old. And it's not too much different than it was when they built it. They added these doors down here after I got there. They painted that wall. That was just a concrete block wall when I started teaching there. These walls around the gym that you see the wood on, they were not always like that. When that gym was originally built, there were a pipe railing that went around. And the kids would slide under that railing and get out on the floor. And Ralph Benson didn't like anybody walking on his basketball floor. So Ralph had them come up and they boxed them in. And so you have a boxed in court right there. And the referees liked it because they wouldn't trip over people's feet and stuff, but you're still pretty close. When you sit in these seats over here, your feet are on the line, and that's always been a problem there. Small court, but it's neat. Seen a lot of basketball games in that gym. But just think about that. And they used to have I guess it's still there. If you go up, there's a metal thing up there, and they had a rope tied to it that came down, and kids would climb. They put mats underneath it, and they'd climb, see how high up that rope they'd get. They wouldn't do that today for nothing, you know. But neat. And underneath that, there was a classroom underneath right over here. That's where the biology lab was. And so can you imagine having biology down there and basketballs going on the floor all the time? And I know that they had lights that hung down from the ceiling, and said the kids would go in there and they'd take the erasers and they'd lay them up at the edge of the lights. When the basketball started going, it'd bounce the erasers off and they'd fall down on the teacher's desk. So, and that's the 1957 team that finished third in the state, and that's when there was no classification. And they went to Vanderbilt and played. They had 16 teams in the state tournament, and they finished. And they should have won it. Perry County won it that year, and Summertown beat Perry County 3 out of 4 times. But the last time they played, Summertown had 2 guys sick with the flu, and another guy got hurt. So they got beat by Perry County, and Perry County went on and won it. And then I put this picture kind of to end it. This was in 2008, the year I retired. I went back and taught for 4 more years, but I retired here. And U.S. News and World Report, we were on the list for the best schools in the nation. And I put this on here because of the people with me right there. Regina Kemper, she taught at Summertown for about 46 years. Ann was there 35 years. I was there 40 years. Diane Webb was there 42 or 43. And Connie was there for 38 to 40. So we got over 200 years right there with our teachers. And those people I taught with, I mean, they were the core. And then we had some others. There were about 8 of us that taught together for 30-something years there. But I thought that was pretty good. And then finish it off with that. This is Mr. James. And Mr. James was, he taught there. I taught with him for 4 years before he retired. And y'all didn't have Mr. James. Anybody in here have Mr. James for a teacher? Any stories about Mr. James? Huh? Sink or swim. If you don't get yeah, sink or swim. So, but Mr. James would go back to that. Mr. James would come in the teacher's lounge, and every time we'd have a faculty meeting, he'd call Mr. Vincent chief. Where did my mouse go? There it is. He called Mr. Vincent, who was the principal chief. He'd say, "Chief, what are we going to do about these lost books?" Every faculty meeting, what are we going to do about these lost books? You know, but that car right there is Marvin Crosswaite's car. 1937, what is that? Essex. Is it Essex? I think that's what it is. But not 1937 tag on here. 1937 car. And Mr. James was a World War II veteran and stuff, taught there. So I taught with some interesting people. I could talk to you all day about sports and stuff at Summertown. I got up there the second year I was there, they taught me into coaching junior high basketball. Girls basketball. I'd never coached anything in my life, so I coached junior high girls basketball for a couple of years, but I ended up coaching for about 30-something years while I was there. Coached junior high girls basketball, helped coach high school basketball with Jimmy Freeman for 7 years, JV coach, helped coach junior high high school boys B team with Jimmy Freeman. Then Bobby Wyrick and I started softball in 1979 at Summertown and coached that for 30-something years. So did a year or two of coaching up there. And most of that was without coaching supplements, just because you liked it. But boy, it has changed from the time that we started and did all that stuff. You know, when we got there, the only sports you had at Summertown were boys basketball, girls basketball, and they had just started baseball. And now what do you have? They've won, the last 5 or 6 golf championships, you know. So a lot of stuff. Anybody have any questions about Summertown? We got a lot of Summertown people here that can answer them. Yeah.
Why didn't they ever have football until just?
The reason they never had football was Mr. Vincent. Mr. Vincent had played football when he was younger, and you know he had the hurt shoulder. He always going around that shoulder like that. He hurt his shoulder playing football, and he would never start football because he didn't want any boys to get injured. So we never had football, but we were big in basketball, and we'd go to all these basketball games. Now, I was a young new teacher. So Mr. Vincent would always send me out before the game got over. He'd always have called a local restaurant, and they would do hamburgers for all the basketball players, and he'd carry a cooler with Hershey bars and a carton of milk. And so I'd have to leave the basketball game and go to the restaurant and pick the hamburgers up and be on the bus when all the kids came back on the bus and give them a hamburger and a Hershey bar and a carton of milk. Every game. And we kept doing that all the way up until John Cook was coaching basketball. And if you know John, I know that the only year he coached boys basketball, Summertown boys went 1-26. And John had come in the teacher's lounge, got the best 1-26 team in the state. But anyhow, they played down at Loretto one night, and he did something, made the boys mad. Got back on the bus, we handed out all those things, and they turned the light off, and the bus starts going up the highway, and all the boys chunk them hamburgers to the front of the bus. So John had them cut the lights on the bus. He sat up on the back of that seat and just watched them all the way back to Summertown. And that was the last time they got hamburgers. So he was great. He knew, he'd set up on when you go in and you'd have got the wall around, he'd go up and sit on the wall and he could watch the kids in the stand. He knew what everybody did. The next day, if you did something, you was in his office. And I've seen him. When I was up there, one of my second year I was up there, the kids let the air out of my tire on my Camaro. Mr. Vincent comes down. He says, "You by any chance got a hand pump?" I said, "Yeah, I got one." He said, "Take them boys out there and let them pump that tire up." He said, "Don't jack the car up till it gets close to time to go home." So I carried them out there, and they pumped for 2 hours on my tire. And gets close to time, I said, "Boys, we better jack it up so we can get the air in it before the bell rings." But stuff like that, that's pretty neat. And
the early 70s, does anybody recall what the overall feeling was when the farm moved in? Were the residents skeptical?
I imagine they were scared to death when they first came in. They always had heard that Charles Manson was going to get out of jail and come live with them. That was a big thing. But farm kids were really smart, really smart. I learned a lot of computer stuff from them while they were there, and they were really smart. But when I started teaching at Summertown, I was asked one of them the other day, a while ago, how many teachers are at Summertown now in the 7th, 8th grade and the high school? I bet there's probably, Katie? And I bet the high school's got at least 45 or 50, haven't they? They got a bunch. We had 24 when I started. Had 24 teachers, and my biggest class I ever had 45 kids in it. And most classes now do, 20-something? 25. I had 45 kids in 9th grade geography one year. And it took a while to grade papers. I was on the cutting edge at Summertown. I was one of the first 3 teachers to ever have a calculator. Connie Holman, Jerry Thomas, and I all bought a calculator at the same time. And we could get in there and do our grades, and at the end of the year, you had to do all this figuring and stuff. We'd be done for everybody else. Next year, everybody had a calculator. So we did that. Had the first computers in Summertown, first computer class. First one on the internet. Applied for a grant with Oak Ridge National Lab in 1993 because they gave away 4 computers. We got picked. So I got to go to Oak Ridge and spend 3 or 4 weeks learning. They gave us 4 computers. They gave us a direct line. They paid $10,000 a month for us to have at Summertown High School. And what that developed into, Will over there, Will's one of my prime successes. He did it on his own, but I can claim him because he took computers at Summertown. I've got several of them. Leiden's another one. He did really good at Summertown. And never had Scotty, though. You'd have been good, Scotty. But we got a lot. We were cutting edge on a lot of that stuff. First thing to do that at Summertown. Anything else, Summertown people? Did I have y'all for geography? I never had you for history, right? Yeah. Yeah, that was fun stuff to do. Yeah, fun stuff to do. Anybody else? I guess that's it. Appreciate y'all coming. And I had people lined up and everything changes. Next month, I've got the mayor. It's supposed to be Nancy, but Nancy's daughter's getting married. So she's going to be in April. I don't have March down yet. Kylie is set up to do July. So I'll get all that out to you. I think but as I get those in.